Welcome back to another video for OCR GCSE Business. I'm going to be covering 3.1 and 3.2 in this video. Let's get started. So a few key terms to know in 3.1. Human resources is basically a term we use for the workers that are employed by a business. Functions, the different type of work that need to be done in business. I think it's like production, finance and marketing, kind of a different way of saying departments. Regulations are the rules and laws that are imposed by government on businesses, and 0-hour contracts. Some of you may even be in a 0-hour contract. It's where you've got no guaranteed hours, and your workplace will usually ask you to work on a week-by-week basis, and your hours will change. Some weeks you might have no hours, other weeks you might have 20 hours. It depends on how busy the business is. So human resources, what is the purpose of it? Well, human resources covers a variety of different things, but it's usually about monitoring and supporting the employees within a business. We need to think about what the purpose of human resources is and how many employees we need to hire and what type of workers we need. You know, if we're Tesco and they run up to Christmas, we might hire a lot of temporary staff just to cover the Christmas period. Human resource plan is just a bit further on, really. What is that blend of full-time or part-time staff that we need? Do we need really skilled, experienced staff? Do we need some maybe staff that have got less experience so we can train them up in the correct way? What sort of blend of people do we need to hire? And that's our human resource plan. Up next then is identifying and meeting the HR needs. So what might affect employment? Workers need replacing. So workers will leave over time. We need to think about replacing them. Businesses will get bigger at times and we need to hire new staff through growth. Sometimes they might get smaller. We might need to make staff redundant. We might change our production method. We might change from job to batch, and that might change how many employees we need. We might relocate our business to a new place. We need to move employees. There might be certain changes in law. For example, minimum wage might go up and we need to change people's contracts and things like that. Things to consider: what sort of blend of workers do we need? Combinations of full-time, part-time, temporary, permanent, 0-hour contracts. When do we need workers? Are we busier at weekends? You know, are you centre parks? You're a lot busier in the summer holidays. Skills of workers. Do we need our workers to be really skilled? Should they have degrees, or can we just hire anybody that's just left school? Do we need to think about a combination of ages, genders, ethnicities? We need to also comply with different laws. And we also need to think about, can we afford these employees as well? You know, what is the cost of them? Okay, that's it for the 3.1. It's really short, so we're going to do 3.2 within this as well, which is basically organisational structures. So authority is who has the power within the organisation. Accountability, who is responsible. Job description is going to describe the main duties, tasks and responsibilities of a worker. Delegation is giving work to some of your subordinates. Organisational charts will come on to, actually all of these terms I think I will cover when I show you organisational charts. So I might flick between different slides here. So this is an organisational chart, or sometimes there's an organisational structure. The person at the top has the most authority, so in this situation director, and the people at the bottom have the lowest authority, in this situation operatives. Layers of the different levels of authority. So we've got 1 at the top, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers in this organisational chart. Chain of command are the links and the level of authority. So for example, if we say what is the chain of command from the director to the team leader on the right hand side, it will go director, manager, team leader. Subordinates are people that work below the manager, or the director, whoever it is. So for example, the director, that all of the people below the director are their subordinates. Okay, any people below the team leader, for example, are the subordinates of the team leader. Span of control is the number of people that they're directly responsible for. In this situation, director has 1 subordinate because you've only got the manager directly responsible to them. The manager has a span of control of 2 because they've got just 2 team leaders. Okay. Here's another organisational chart. So for example, in this situation, the CEO has got 6 for their span of control. Okay, it's just different image, but same process. So what are the benefits of having an organisational chart for a business? Shows clear reporting structure, who you've got to report to. It helps new employees know who their manager is, who their subordinates are. It helps to manage workload because everyone knows what they're doing, and it should make planning a lot easier. So why do some businesses have different organizational structures? Well, it depends on the size of your business. If you're a massive business, you're going to need to have maybe a different, wider span of control, or you might decide to go with a narrower span of control. It just depends, really. The nature of your business. Are you a charity? Are you a school? Are you a profit-making business? What are you trying to do? What are the skills of your employees? Are they really heavily skilled and you can let them go off and do their own thing? Or do you really need to control them because they're not too sure what they're meant to be doing? And also, what are the business objectives? Are we just trying to make as much money as possible? Is that our objective? Or are we trying to help people? That may also impact on our organizational structure. So a tall organizational structure would be one with many layers. That's the one on the left-hand side. And a flat organizational structure is an organization with few layers, which is the one on the right-hand side. So there's pros and cons of, I think actually there's only pros that you need to know for OCR GCSE business. So the pros of tool, let's do that first. You have fewer employees to control because you've got more layers of management. You can supervise them a lot closer, and there's also opportunities for people to get promoted because you have more layers. Flat, there's going to be less miscommunications because communication is going to be very direct. In this situation, there's just 2 layers, so that's a lot easier. You'll have faster decision making, and it should also encourage people to work together and have more shared ideas. Okay, ways of working's up next. So full-time working, let's put my points up. Okay, so full-time working is when a person works 35 hours or more. So if they're working 34 hours or less, they would be referred to as part-time. You need to know pros and cons for the worker and for the business of either being on a full-time working contract or for the business of hiring a full-time worker. So pros and cons for the worker: good job security, you'll get holiday and sick pay, you'll get more pay because you're working more hours, not very flexible, and you will have to work obviously more hours. Pros and cons for the business: potentially they're going to be more motivated staff. Communication should be easier as staff are going to be in more often. Organisation should be clearer. You've got the commitment to pay them though because they're working so many more hours, and it's going to be less flexible for you as a business. Part-time worker, any person that's working fewer than 35 hours per week, so 34 hours or less. Pros and cons for the worker: could suit more people to work part-time, a bit more flexible, especially if you've got young children and things like that. You're going to earn less because you're working less hours, and sometimes part-time working can be more inconvenient hours, more evenings and weekends and things like that. Pros and cons for the business: potentially it's going to be more choice because more people will be willing to apply for part-time roles, and you can also respond to demand, so you can hire people for weekends or evenings and things like that. Recruitment and training costs can be higher, especially if you're hiring 2 part-time staff to fill a full-time role. You'll then have to recruit and train 2 people, so it's twice as expensive. And communication can be difficult if those part-time staff are working on different days. Temporary staff, a bit different. This is when you're hiring someone for a fixed period of time, so it could just be the summer holidays or Christmas or just 2 weeks. Okay, at the end of that period, the job no longer exists. They don't get fired or anything like that or made redundant. The contract is just for a period of time, and at the end of the period of time, that job no longer exists. So pros and cons to the worker: very flexible. You can do it just as and when you choose to do it. If it's just for the summer holidays or Christmas, good for students. You can experience various jobs doing temporary working. There's low job security though, and there's less pay annually because you're only working for a fixed period of time. Pros and cons for the business: more flexible, helps us meet demand, less motivated staff potentially because they know they're going to be leaving at some point, and you may also have a higher turnover of staff, which may lead to higher recruitment and training costs. Self-employment is when people work for themselves. So for example, you might get an electrician that works for himself, but then you hire them to come onto the building site to complete certain tasks. Pros and cons for the worker: a lot more freedom, a lot more flexibility. However, you've got to generate all of your money, and at the start, as you get a better reputation, you're going to have lower returns until you've got that better reputation. Pros and cons of the business: this is for using self-employed people. There's no need to train because they should be hired. They should be already very experienced and well trained. There's more flexibility because we only need to use them when we need them. It can be variable quality in self-employed people though, like some might be really, really good, some might not be so good. And also they're more expensive than hiring somebody just for your own business. Flexible working is when you hire somebody, or not necessarily hire somebody, you might give them staff already employed flexible working, but you allow them to change their working patterns. So it could be their working time, where they locate from, as in they might work at home, also their pattern of working. So you might allow them to work extended days, evenings, things like that. This is really going to depend on the type of business. This obviously wouldn't be suitable for a teacher, but it might be suitable if you're an accountant or something like that. So working from home, what are the pros and cons then you need to know for the business and again for the employee? So for the business, you get lower absence and lower lateness, increased productivity and motivation. The staff should be more motivated and more productive. Staff may need training on how to use things like Zoom and Google Meets and things like that. They could also be less productive if they've got young children at home, maybe animals, things like that. So it really depends on the individual. For the employee, more freedom. They're going to save on travel costs. They may miss that social aspect of being in the workplace. And also if they're at home a lot through the winter period, they're going to be using heating and stuff like that more often, so their bills may increase. You really need to watch out in the exam for, are we talking about pros and cons of the business or the employee throughout this whole section? Working while mobile doesn't tend to come up that often, I'll be honest, on the exam, but worth noting, this is allowing people to work while they're commuting into work, so like on the train or whatever. Pros of the business: employees may work longer, they like to be more motivated and productive. There could be connectivity issues. Think about your mobile data when you've been on a train or on the tube. It's not overly brilliant. It can help reduce, in terms of, so you could have connectivity issues, and there might be some business cost element there as well. That should really be an advantage. For the employees, more freedom, full use of time, which is obviously good for employees. Connectivity issues again, and they will require technology as well. Okay, so disadvantage for the business one is reduced business cost. I think basically you may have some business costs because staff may request for you to buy things like laptops and mobiles and things like that for them to actually do working while mobile. So there's some examples here. What you might want to do is just have a little think about what contracts are they likely to be on. For example, the first one, Jenny works for McDonald's every Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday and completes a 12-hour day. So she's going to be working a 36-hour week. So that means she's full-time, and her contract has no end date. So she'd be on a permanent contract. So she's permanent full-time. So go through each of these and have a little think about what type of contract they're likely to be on.